Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we're going to do another viewer contract here. There's not been very many of these rolling in, so either feel free to send more of them, or we might look to start winding down this series pretty soon. We've been going for a while. This is episode, 87? So yeah, we could definitely start thinking about that, but if you want it to keep going, keep sending them in. For now, we do have one ready to go here. We're going to be doing ARC Trooper 8248's Near and Far contract. This is a hard difficulty contract to have two sun impact vehicles hit direct or as close to opposite sides of the sun. The two IMPVs must launch together, and they can't have anything other than data recorders and transmission hardware. No other science. Okay, I'm not entirely sure what the point of it is, but sure, there's not really anything to impact with the sun, right? So they would probably end up burning up. We're going to need a couple of extremely significant Delta V vehicles to carry the impactors. And I would argue that that would essentially be part of the spacecraft. So let's design the actual spacecraft here. We would start with like a small or maybe even an extra small remote guidance unit. And then it would need data recorders, no other science, and transmitters, no other science equipment. So I'm not sure what exactly is meant by data recorders here. Maybe like you can't process it, but anything that can gather data. So things like mystery goos would be okay. Science juniors would be fine, but processing labs would not. Perhaps that's what's meant by that. So it's just intended to collect data and transmit it back. If that's the case, then we would probably have like a pair of science juniors, and we're going to be duplicating this, right? So we'd have a science junior here, and then as far as the pod goes, that would have... Is a medium size correct? No, the small size is what would fit on here. So it would be something like this, and then we would have a transmitter back. We would need that to be at least like an HG1. It would need to be a pretty powerful transmitter, maybe even like an RA100. Yeah, that's doable. And then beneath that, we would have a bay. The awkward part about this is we have no way to reset the Science Junior and the Mystery Goo, right? So maybe we should just have repeatable science. Maybe that's what we should consider to be the definition of science recorders. Maybe. I'm realizing here that we don't have a root part, so I'm just going to bring this up here, attach that on here like... Well, this is actually terrible. We're going to need to reroute this. That's fine. We're going to put in a pod here. This is going to be a small remote guidance unit. That is the right size there. We'll reroute this over to the remote guidance unit. Of course, we're not going to have the mobile processing lab, right? That's obviously not going to be a thing. So all we need to contain on this is this stuff here. And then I'm thinking here about some sort of a, like, shading system. Solar panels will be important. We're going to need some... Oh, I minimized the game. Perfect. We're going to need some sort of power, of course. So something like a 1K rechargeable battery bank. We're going to need some power generation. I would like something that sticks out pretty far here. Something like... Actually, the 0x10C might be about what we're looking for that. No, I want them to stick out further. We might have to put them on extenders. Yeah, I'm going to do that. So we're going to put in some robot parts here. A 1P4. Putting on something kind of like that. And then we put on these guys right here like that. So then that can be extended out to be out over here. So that our power generation is all the way out this way. And that is so that that is not affected by our sunshade. And yes, we are going to have a sunshade. Then I'm thinking about what we want to have down here. Well, we're going to need some form of a payload bay. There's no doubt about that. So payload, we're going to need like a 1.25 meter service bay. We're only going to have rerunnable experiments here. So that is absolutely fine. We're going to put in... What kind of data collectors are we going to put in here? Obviously, we're going to need a thermometer, right? I'm going to have a magnetometer on here that will be externally located. I don't think there's a point in including a seismic accelerometer or even an atmospheric fluid spectrovariometer. That requires an atmosphere. So we'll put in the too hot thermometer. In fact, maybe we should just radially attach these. A too hot thermometer here. That'll maybe save us some weight, which is probably a good thing here. We would want to probably have something like a computer flight unit attached somewhere. Maybe put that over here. So we'd have a thermometer, a magnetometer, survey scanner, narrowband scanner, I don't think are worth bringing. We can have a barometer over on this side. And that's kind of all of the science experiments that we would need for something like this. So beyond that, we'd probably be looking to have this be xenon powered. Like this. So we put in some xenon here. You can see this is already getting relatively expensive. These need to both launch in the first launch. I want this to be all retracted up like that. So these will both need to launch in the first launch. We can then toss in theory, an engine here. The major problem with tossing like a Dawn engine here is A, power. What is the power requirement of a Dawn? That is 8.74 electric charge. How much do these photovoltaic panels actually generate? We need to figure that out. The answer is 8.3. So that should be able to run a single Dawn electric propulsion system. So something like this would be excellent for this sort of an impactor. But I would like to put some sort of a sunshade on it. So what would that sunshade look like? Well, out of curiosity, this is probably going to go terribly, but out of curiosity, obviously this isn't really going to work. But if we were to inflate this heat shield and extend these guys on out, do our solar panels go beyond the sunshade? They actually just do. That's basically perfect. I love it. Okay, so that works really, really well. We'll get those retracted, and we'll deflate this heat shield. We need a solution. We do need a solution. That's not a very helpful thing to say, really, I suppose. But we need a solution for running the engine with the heat shield here. So the idea behind this is we're going to go here, and I'm going to duplicate this to be about here. Yeah, I think that's about even. Let's snap it into place. Okay, I kind of hate that. Let's put it into local mode and turn off snapping for the moment. And we're just going to bring this in to be about here. There we go. Same thing over here. We'll bring that in until it just connects. There we go. That should do for power, because what I'm thinking about doing is I'm thinking about actually having two Dawn engines. My next question is this. If we were to have a pair of cubic octagonal struts here, or maybe even modular girder segments, those are a bit on the big side. If we were to have a pair of cubic octagonal struts here, those are a bit on the small side. Okay, so modular girder segments like this, and then Dawn electric propulsion engines that are essentially, you know, running down this way. Now, it doesn't want to attach like that. We could maybe do a cubic octagonal strut here and attach it like that. If we were to run it something like that, and then we were to run another modular girder segment like this as a spacer, and then something like this, right? So we've got this heat shield. I don't know how much these are going to be deflected by the actual heat shield. That's something we could figure out in testing. I have no idea if these actually have any access to the xenon, but it looks like they do. So let's put this out on the pad for some quick simulated testing. The question that I have right now is A, what sort of thrust to weight do we have? And I want to maybe move these out a smidgen more. Yeah. I want to move them out to about here. So the next question I have is, with this heat shield inflated, do we have any thrust capabilities? Obviously, this will allow us to fire our engines when we have this deflated. But once we've inflated it, Do we have any thrust whatsoever? So I'm going to call this, what was your name? Arc Trooper and then some numbers? Yeah, Arc Trooper 8248. Okay, nice Clone Wars reference, by the way. Arc Trooper 8248. There we go. We're going to, actually I just saved it as that, but this is going to be the Kerbal Impactor. Okay, there we go. Beautiful. We're going to put this out on the pad. It's going to tumble over. We want to put it out in orbit as quickly as we can. Let's put this on kill rot as soon as we load in. We're going to be falling over very rapidly. That's going to be potentially a problem. Come on, KSB. You can do it. Okay, kill rot. And I'm opening the cheat menu to put us up in orbit. Actually, we're holding... Nope, we're tipping. We are definitely chipping. Okay. I rendezvoused us in orbit with the Stay Putnik because that was the quickest thing I got to. Cool. Let's put this in orbit around Kerbin. There we go. And the question now is, what do we actually have here? 5248 meters per second. That's not bad. And at this point, I want to put us in, like, surface velocity. But the real question is, if we were to extend our solar panels here, like so, and we should also push out our telescoping hydraulic cylinders, something like this. If we were to inflate our heat shield, which once this is inflated, it cannot be deflated. You can see here, this is kind of awkward. We may need to extend these out, which would make that really awkward to launch. I don't know how that'll work, but we can just sit here and let's keep an eye on our orbital velocity. Seems unaffected. This seems like it works just fine. This is absolutely troll science. This should not work, for the record, but it seems to. So the other idea would have been to extend this out so that these are also poking out at the heat shield. But that would expose them to the elements, and that's probably not something that we want. So we can see we've already deorbited, and that's absolutely fine. We're going to revert that back to the vehicle assembly. So that seems to work. I like it. That's very, very solid. So with us back at the vehicle assembly here, we're now going to need to have two of these, and we're going to need to join them together somehow. How do we want to store this? That's quite a question. I think that we should use a fairing, for sure. So if we were to duplicate this, and obviously, apparently I can't duplicate it? I can't duplicate the root part. Okay, fair enough. So if we were to duplicate this, right, and then duplicate this, and then all we need is the remote guidance unit. So from here, we would want to put on some form of a decoupler down here. So this would need to be, I think this is a 25 size decoupler, right? This is going to be very wide. Yeah, this is a 25 size decoupler. These have to launch simultaneously. Okay. We can definitely do something weird here. So a decoupler here, and then we can have like twin payload fairings. I don't know how wide these will have to actually get. Maybe not this wide? Maybe something kind of like this. So twin payload fairings, like all of that. I'm going to ditch this for right now, and we'll be duplicating this. Then we need to deliver this, of course, and I'm going to do a modular girder segment. This is going to need some strutting, no doubt about that, but a modular girder segment that then connects to another modular girder segment, or maybe even a set of modular girder segments. Like this. I'd want to snap that into position, and this will need to be strutted. No doubt about that. I think this is too big. I think that we should go down a size here. Okay, so something like this, and then we would, for now, reroute this part again. I don't want it to be rotated this way. There we go. That's back to the same rotation. Duplicate this. And essentially, we would want to just duplicate what we have over here, right? So we would need to attach this guy Well, really what we need to do is we would need to duplicate the modular girder segment and put it in here. We'd snap it into position and then pull it out this direction to be like that. That is about symmetrical. Then we would duplicate here. We actually do need more space here. Okay. This is going to be a monstrosity. I can tell you that right now. So I'm going to ditch this. Do we have a wider fairing that we could use for this, out of curiosity? So, oh, that's awkward. It didn't go back to the same place. So if we were to do this, right? And then we duplicate this like so, and we attach it here. So that's basically in the same place, right? And then we move this down and out, and then down and out like that. That gives us some space here. We can strut those together. And then we could do a modular girder segment here with the intention being that this connects to the rest of the rocket. So something like that. Then we would definitely want a strut up here, connecting these two together like that. I would want a strut down here, connecting them together there. And then I would also further want a strut here to here. And the same thing over here. So here to here, approximately. So that should be relatively stable. Now the question is, what's the biggest fairing, payload fairing we have access to? 5 meter fairing? That actually might do the trick. This is pretty ridiculous, for the record. This fairing alone is weighing like 6 tons. That is really ridiculous. Okay. So from here, we're going to need some form of a big tank. Like, we're in, like, Kerbin size, right? This is not Rockamax. We're going to need bigger than Rockamax for this puppy. What are we going for here? Kerbin size. I don't usually use these. So I'm actually not sure where those tanks are. Let's see. These are Kerbin. Okay, so we would go for, like, one of these guys. This would, in theory, be our orbital maneuvering stage. I also might want to toss in a tiny bit more xenon here, now that I think about it. So I would detach this and this, and we would look at potentially, like, xenon's expensive, right? But we would look at potentially doing something like that. Is that breaking our fairing in any meaningful way? A little bit. We would want to edit that fairing then. Bring it up slightly further to be about like this or so. And then close that. Okay. That should be about right. It's quite the fairing, no doubt about that. So then this would be a big old Corgi engine. Actually, not even a Corgi. We would need a bigger one. Kodiak? No, Kodiak is not the size. So a Corgi is not Kerbin-sized. Is there a vacuum optimized Kerbin-sized engine? Because we've got, like, the Mammoth, right? And we're probably going to use something like a Mammoth to take off. Probably. But is there something around Mammoth size that's vacuum optimized? You can see here that the specific impulse is 295 to 315, which is not great compared to a Corgi, which is rocking 355 in vacuum. So we could do multiple Corgis or multiple Poodles even. That's a potential option. I don't think that there are any vacuum optimized engines at this size. Bobcat goes up to 310 and I think is the wrong size. Yeah. Cool. Wolfhound goes to 380. Is the Wolfhound the most vacuum optimized engine? Hang on. 380, 350, 310. We can just look through these real quick here. 315, yeah. 340, but I mean, it's an aerospike, right? So 320, 330, 250. Just checking through these real quick. That's a 355 on the Cheetah, but this was a 380. Okay. I mean, nuclear engines are way higher specific impulse, but I'm talking about liquid fuel and oxidizer engines, right? I think that 350 is the best that we're going to get for that. I mean, 4,200 for the Dawn, but that's, again, not liquid fuel and oxidizer. Yeah, so the Wolfhound is the best that we're going to get. We should put in an engine plate then, most likely. So an engine plate of an EP50? Yeah, an EP50. So we're going to have this be at least triple. I think triple works there, kind of. I don't love it. Maybe we'll just do dual. No, even that doesn't really go all that well. Well, this is going to be really low thrust to weight, right? Like, incredibly low thrust to weight. And let's see here. Yeah, the decoupler is there and there. That seems reasonably fine. So 0.04 thrust to weight right now, but if we were to look at Kerbin in orbit, 0.26. So it's not good, but it would get us a ways, 7,200 meters per second right there, plus all of this. Actually, hang on. This is stage 1. That's not actually telling me what this stage would be. All stages, please. Stage 2 would be 0 meters per second. That doesn't seem right. That very doesn't seem right. This is now showing up in stage 1. Okay, yeah, that's the 7253, but then stage 0 is supposed to be 72. I don't know what's going on here. I think that it might have lost the ability to flow fuel through here, now that I look at this. So maybe we would need a fuel line, and the fuel line would travel from, like, here-ish? We wouldn't need... Well, yeah, 2 of them is fine. From here to, you know, like, here. No, that's not updating. Okay, I'm not sure whether these are active or not. We'll need to check that. For now, let's move on, and we're going to put in a TD50 decoupler. That's very awkward looking. We probably want to increase our strength here. So let's put a strut connector going from here to here. There we go. We'll increase some strength there. Then let's put in some engines here. So we're going to need some Kerbidine big ol' engine tanks. Something like this. And then what would it look like if we were to try to lift this off with Minmus? I don't even know what that thrust to weight would even approximate. Are we better off with those or mainsails? Engines, that's what we want to be in. So this is maximum thrust of 4,000 kilonewtons versus a mainsail, which is 1,500 kilonewtons. So this is a lot stronger. Oh, wow, that's still too small. Well, that's noted. 0.81 thrust to weight there. So I think we go for maybe like vectors. No, I think if we're going to do that, we do go for mainsails. So an engine plate and mainsails, perhaps. So an EP50. Go into like a 4x1 configuration. This is probably too small to feasibly fit mainsails. Yeah, I think it's too small to feasibly fit mainsails in that configuration. In this configuration, though, that kind of works. That's 1.17. They're hanging out the side. So maybe instead we would go for, say, instead of mainsails, we would go for, say, skippers. The skippers are about the same size. Vectors are arguably the way to go here, if I can get them to attach correctly. So something like this, right? Come on, get in there. Oh, that didn't go. It really doesn't want to put that center vector in. Okay. We could go for... We could go for 6x1. This is going to get really expensive. Vectors are really, really expensive engines, right? But I mean, we're going to get paid $1 million for this. So it really doesn't want to go in that center one. I guess that's fine. So what is our thrust to weight here? 1.19? It's not great. So we would look to have some side tanks here. We'll try starting with 2. And I'd like these to be liquid fueled. We'll go down to Rockamax size. What other color options are there here? Orange. Beautiful. We're going to go with orange. There we go. So we're going to go for Rockamax size tanks here. And you can see those look tiny in comparison. No doubt about that. So we're going to do a couple of these. We're going to do Rockamax size up at the top. We will flow the fuel inward, and they're going to get drained really, really fast, aren't they? Like, incredibly, incredibly fast. Fuel tanks and fuel lines. Okay. So we move those in. We would need to strut these something like this. There we go. And then we would have, like, either probably mainsails out here, to be honest. Mainsails would probably be the way to go. So this is getting expensive, but we have lots and lots of budget headroom. What am I looking at here? Mainsail. Okay, this is with the boat tails. That's why I didn't recognize it. That's okay. So mainsails like this. Of course, the mainsails do not have the thrust to weight to lift this off. That's 1.33 there. Okay. That's reasonably fine. But what if we were to quad couple these mainsails? So that would end up being something kind of like this. 1.41. I mean, we're getting there. What about 6? This is starting to get more ridiculous, but I mean, we're not surprised about that. 1.47. So we actually kind of want 8. That's hilarious. Okay, 1.51. That's getting reasonable. There. I use the term reasonable loosely. We should definitely strut these from up here to up here. No doubt about that. That needs to be strutted in. And from here, my main questions are, is this fuel actually flowing correctly? And I don't know the answer to that. And how are we looking for all of this nonsense, right? I suspect that we've got some awkwardness going on here. So that's this engine plate, which should really happen at the same time as this, which also happens here. Okay, and then this would be really manually separated once we get high enough. We'll shed a lot of weight there. And then these would be probably manually activated as well. Okay, so assuming that our electric propulsion engines are working correctly, this should theoretically maybe do the trick. Let's put this out on the pad. I'm going to run a test launch here. This will be reverted. I want to know a few things. Specifically, I want to make sure that we are working with the electric engines. I want to make sure that those are functional. And I also want to make sure that we're going to properly get into orbit here. I'm a little concerned about our thrust to weight. It's a little on the low side. Let's just run a quick MechJeb launch simulation, and we'll see how that ends up going. So no major stability issues there. Let's see what MechJeb thinks for ascent guidance. So we will engage autopilot, and it's just waiting for us to launch this. So let's do it right now. Let's see how it goes. Okay, that's some exciting gimbaling right off the bat. We've got some shaking going on here. It's kind of a stubby rocket, no doubt about that. How long are these burn times going to be? About 80 seconds? Okay. We're definitely struggling a bit here. I think we're going to have a problem. Okay, now it's trying to turn. I think we're going to have a problem with a lack of control authority right here. We probably want to work on that. But the fact that it's swaying as a unit like this is interesting. That's very, very interesting. So let's just see how this ascent goes. So far, MechJeb is not losing control, so that's good. It seems reasonably fine. It'll auto stage fairings. It will auto deploy solar panels, which might be a little bit awkward. We might not want to auto deploy the solar panels. In fact, we're not, for the real launch, we're not going to be using MechJeb, I don't think. We're definitely slow here. There's no doubt about that. This thing feels pretty underpowered. We might want another ring of SRBs. What could possibly go wrong? Honestly, that might not be a terrible idea. We've got a lot of thrust here, but there's a ton of weight here. And by a ton, I mean many, many tons. What happens if we physics warp? Okay, I hate that. Thank you. We're going to stop the physics warp. This was coming out of the fairing and just kind of going all over. So the real question here is, what's our thrust to weight look like after this staging event? .28. It's not great. But our apoapsis height is already about 70 kilometers. Maybe we're not too underweight here. Okay. It'll auto-stage the fairing here. I definitely think that we have a lack of control authority in this stage. I think that's something that we should certainly change. It's doing a bit of a corrective burn, trying to put us in that 90-degree heading, which I'm okay with. No, it seems like this is fine. It seems like we're not too underpowered on this first stage, which was where my primary concern was. We also don't wiggle around too much. There is some wiggling, no doubt about that. I would have expected MechJeb to auto-stage the fairings by now. I probably would have. I mean, we're at 64 kilometers. Okay, it's going to enter into coast mode here shortly. And now you can see that we're just kind of tumbling. We're having a bit of a hard time controlling this tumble. I definitely would have deployed this fairing myself by now. I don't know why MechJeb never deployed the fairing, but I'm going to deploy it. There we go. So yeah, MechJeb is trying to go this direction, and we're going this way. So I think we can definitively say this stage is strong enough. Which means that this stage is strong enough too. So we can revert that back. I just want to put in that one little tweak here. But otherwise, I think this is good. I think we're ready to go here. So we're going to put in a command and control here. We're going to put in a large advanced reaction wheel module. That is not as large as I had hoped. Maybe we should put it here instead. That does mean we need to modify our fairing, though. And I kind of don't want to do that. So let's bring this back here. And yeah, we'll put in a large reaction wheel here. I really wish that that was a bigger model, right? But we'll just have to strut it. So we'll strut it like so. There we go. That's 4 struts there. That should, in theory, do the trick. And that just gives us a lot more reaction control up here. So that should be fine. With that, it is time to put a cut in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to launch this thing for real. And we're going to go impact the 2 sides of Kerbal as best we can. We'll see how that ends up going. Delta Vs are going to be wonky, but it should, in theory, be okay-ish. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Shadowwolf, and Lohan80, Rogue Corvid, Kentogan, Andy McGar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.